Well, welcome back to our Tuesday edition of Forecast Lab, and welcome to our new supporters, Dane Arnold, Peter Belingett, and Peter Wharton. Your support is very much appreciated. Well, we've got a lot of cumulus out there. It's starting to look like summer. Bases on these clouds up at about 4,000, and I don't know if you can see it through the breaks, some cirrus aloft. There's very fine filaments there, and it's almost like a cirrostratus layer. A sign of change coming with a Pacific system on the way here. There's how things are looking on the surface map. We've got an active Pacific system coming through the southern Rockies. And as usual, things are very subtle when they cross the mountains there. But one thing that you might notice is the northwesterly flow there in Arizona. See this area here? The winds have kind of a westerly component. You can see a shower there at Prescott. And conditions are also kind of mild for this time of year, lots of 70s. And also the dew points are elevated. We've got 40-degree dew point there at Las Vegas, 48 up there at St. George. So this is definitely a different air mass. And if you go further north, you can see the northerly flow there in the Great Basin area. So this is all maritime polar air that originated out there in the eastern Pacific. And a very different air mass in the El Paso area. We've got 20-degree readings out there with temperatures in the low 80s. So very dry air and very warm. You can see even out there in northwest Mexico, 95 at one station there. And another sign that something big is going on is the uniform westerly field. Usually the winds are not symmetrical like this. They're not homogeneous. And usually what we see is maybe kind of a weak cyclonic flow, maybe kind of a lazy wind pattern like that. But not today. It is westerly. So there's that westerly flow kind of feeding up into these pressure falls in southern New Mexico. And also we have an active dry line out there around Big Spring and east of Fort Stockton, dividing these 28-degree dew points from 60s out there in San Angelo. So the moisture is definitely coming up north, and if I draw the 60-degree isodrosotherm, which is a dew point, I'm going to get something like that. And then I can draw a 65 on top of that. 65 is going to run maybe something like that. And then we can even draw 70s. Look at that, 70s coming up south of San Antonio there. So there is our moisture axis. If we had a little bit more lift and a little bit more time to support this Pacific system, we could get storms out there in West Texas. Maybe not today. It is pretty dry. You can see there at that triple point, only 50-degree dew points. So it's kind of doubtful that's going to happen. And there's how things look on the satellite loop there. There's that cyclonic turning of the winds just west of the Four Corners area. And picture yourself driving from Albuquerque westward. You go through Winslow and Flagstaff, and the cloud fields kind of increase in coverage, and soon you're getting into storms. And usually this kind of widespread stormy pattern, that kind of thing is not really common during the summer, so there's almost definitely an upper level system or a front in the area, and that's what's happening today. And if you get further out into the Great Basin area, look at that stout northerly flow. That's not something we normally see this time of year. So that's just more evidence that we've got an upper level low in this area. And a lot of these clouds here are due to the unstable conditions in the mid-levels. In the southeastern U.S., we had all that severe weather over the weekend, and we had some cold air come in behind that, and that's left us with a stationary front north of Miami. And we got this reinforcing shot of cold air coming through the Carolinas into Atlanta, and back behind it, 60s and low 70s, and some unstable air due to that gusty wind. You can see that 33 there, south of Charleston, West Virginia, 32. Yeah, it's definitely gusty back behind that front, and that's just kind of due to that air mass modification back there behind that front. And we can see it there on the satellite imagery. So we got that very strong northwesterly flow, and even though the front, I think, is back here, there's enough cold air in the mid-levels and just off the surface to kind of destabilize things out ahead of the cold front. There's how things look in the northeast U.S. We've just got that pile driver of cold air. Seems like every time we do these presentations, we're seeing northwesterly flow in the northeast U.S. Just winter never ends. And I've put these modified continental polar air with cold air flowing over a warm surface. I've kind of emphasized that because that's what's happening. We've got that cold air riding over very warm ground in Ontario, Michigan, New York, and that's getting just vast fields of towering cumulus going due to that instability there. You can kind of see the opposite effect of lake effect snows. See how the air flows out over Lake Ontario here and it kind of dissipates, which is the opposite of what we usually see in November. And then when it gets on the other side of the lake, we get the reestablishment of convection. And that's because of that cold air flowing over the warm ground and destabilizing. And there's enough surface heat across Ontario, Michigan, Pennsylvania to get these huge towering cumulus fields going. So things are very unstable, and if you're flying in that area, it's probably quite bumpy. Occluded front moving through New England and Long Island there. And that's it on the surface chart. Very cold and not quite cold enough for snow, but there is a little bit of cold rain in New Hampshire and in the Boston area. There's a close-up look at all that towering cumulus there over southern Ontario. Toronto is about right here. Buffalo's here, Erie, and Detroit. And you can see the large size of these elements. And we end up back in the Pacific Northwest. You can see the marine layer has moved in towards the Cascades there, keeping Portland and Seattle kind of cloudy. Elsewhere, it looks like just some snow-capped mountains in the northern Rockies, and as we go south, we get into some of that upper-level instability, or that mid-level instability there with those steep lapse rates north of that upper-level system. There's how things look in the Pacific Northwest. Very warm air at around Minot and Glasgow, Montana, contrasting with these 30s around Winnipeg and Grand Forks. So definitely a warm front through that area. And we have another Alberta clipper coming south out of Edmonton, but just not much punch behind it. And if we move out further west, we can pick up some of that high pressure out in the Pacific, so it's starting to look a little bit more like a warm season pattern with the highs offshore becoming a little bit more dominant. And that gives us kind of a westerly gradient along the coastal regions of Washington and Oregon. And a quick look into Europe, not much to see. Huge high covering much of northern Europe. That's centered up in Norway, and that's given us very persistent northeasterly flow in Germany, UK, and France. And as a result, it's pretty cold for this time of year. Lots of 40s and 50s in that area. Looks like the frontal systems are way down to the south in the Mediterranean region. And the way I found that frontal system, I looked along the Algerian coast, 50s in that area, westerly wind, and then I got out towards Tunisia, near 70 with light northeast wind. So I think that this is the warm sector, and because of that I placed the front kind of in this area here. And looks like also, I didn't catch this earlier, but it looks like the front is very prominent there in Turkey. See out here with a strong north wind? Looks like that even extends out towards Cyprus, so I think that front is out in the Mediterranean region, probably quite stormy. maybe not thunderstorms, but at least very turbulent weather in terms of wind shifts and changes in the weather conditions. Okay, let's go ahead and do our check of Midlevel Dynamics. This is kind of a combination of the weather disturbances and the jet stream. We're looking at conditions up at about 18,000 feet, about 500 millibars. And what we see here today is kind of a split stream. There's a southern stream there across Arizona and Texas, and up to the north, kind of a cold northwesterly stream coming into the Great Lakes. So that upper level low, that's it right there over the Four Corners area, and the lift is out ahead of it, but it's too dry for it to do much south of Interstate 40. Okay, let's run this forward and see what's going to happen over the next week or so. Well, it looks like overnight that upper level low moves into West Texas. By morning it ends up around Amarillo. There it is right there. And then by 18Z it's moving up into Oklahoma and Texas. Or it's moving up into Oklahoma and Kansas. There's that lift out ahead of it there. So upper level low, and looks like another little low out over Arizona. Still maintaining that split flow pattern. And let's go up to Thursday. Things move out to the east. So now it's starting to affect the Appalachian region. I can see things still look kind of stormy out in the Rockies. Looks like a jet streak running through here, another jet streak, and that's kind of bound up with that southern stream jet there. So these will probably move down the backside of that ridge and maybe dig in a little bit over Texas as we get towards Friday. See that right there? They're kind of taking effect. If we have enough moisture Friday, those could produce some showers and storms. And let's see, the pattern kind of amplifies going into Saturday and Sunday. A couple of systems moving onto the Pacific coast there. Outgoing system on the East Coast moving through Pennsylvania. This is Saturday. And we'll just kind of run through very quickly. Looks like by early next week we're looking at one main stream there. Still somewhat northwesterly, but not tapping the Arctic region. So it's probably not going to be quite as cold next week. Another little pesky upper level low or out over the Yuma area around midweek. And let's see what the next big change is. Wow, looks like some ridging building in. Okay, well, we're going to get a warm up for sure by the middle of next week there. Looks like it's going to be hot in the Arizona, New Mexico, Four Corners area, and even Texas. See that 585 line right there. So it is going to warm up quite a bit. Not looking forward to those electric bills. One little disturbance comes into California first couple days of May, and that's going to go mostly north. So it looks like maybe a shot of severe weather coming up for maybe the 4th or 5th. Anyway, we'll see. That's quite a ways down the road. And then looking at the charts for the surface, there's our frontal systems. Getting that southerly flow out ahead of this Pacific system moving in. So let's see. Yeah, we got enough moisture to kick off a squall line, or at least an MCS there in eastern Oklahoma and northeast Texas. So there's how the fronts look around midday, and then for the evening, I think things will be looking like this tomorrow night. Kind of a weak Pacific system coming in, some cold air coming in the backside in the Red River area, and out ahead of it, see all those isobars coming out off the Gulf. That's the conveyor belt of moisture coming up the Mississippi River Valley. So looks like storms once again for Wednesday. And then I'm looking at this other thing coming together in Nevada. This could be mostly an upper level system based on what I saw earlier on those dynamics charts. And then we can see that anti-front situation with a lot of the precip back behind that frontal system there. Then going into Thursday, for Thursday, things do look stormy once again in the central Rockies, and you can see that cold air advection moving south through that area, and that looks like the Pacific system there coming into the Texas Panhandle. There goes the outgoing weather system into the Virginia and Carolinas area. A little bit of a squall line out ahead of that. And then for Friday, looks like that low there near Amarillo moves east and brings the front back in through Texas, and more storms once again for the Mississippi River region. So 2 or 3 days later after this first system, a second one comes through that area. Things move eastward on Saturday to the east coast. So it looks like maybe some storms there around Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. Kind of quiet in Texas, but we can see that nose of cold air building in, getting the upslope flow going, so it's going to be kind of cloudy probably for Saturday. And then things look stormy once again in the northwest. So then by Sunday, lots of high pressure covering the Great Lakes and eastern U.S., but I think this is going to be the last bit of winter. After that, we should see the Gulf start opening up, and you can see as we progress through the charts, it's starting to look much more like late spring there. Another little cold front comes down around Tuesday. Doesn't move very far south. The Gulf is still open, so there's a stationary front right there. You can see it doesn't go very far south. Looks like maybe some outflow-driven stuff around Wednesday into Thursday. Doesn't move very far south. Southerly flow starts building once again. And there you can see by the weekend, looks like maybe some central plains activity. And this next system doesn't go very far south either. So anyway, it looks like we're finally getting into spring. And I think we're going to have some severe weather episodes to look at over the weeks ahead. All right, I need to get this edited and uploaded, so let me go ahead and do that. Anyway, I hope you all are in good health. Thank you for supporting and watching the webcast, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.